Hello everyone, just finished these figures for my Crimean War project. They are Eureka as always, 18mm scale, so sort of slightly bigger than 15mm, and they are Russian Uhlans. I've just painted them up in the colours of the Russian Uhlan that's depicted in the Osprey book on the Russian army of the Crimean War. So they're painted up in the colours of the reserve squadron 7th Voznesensky Uhlans 2nd Composite Uhlan Regiment. So I didn't really, do too much research or anything, but just chose the colours that were there in the Osprey book. I think they're a nice colourful unit anyway. Really pleased with the way they've turned out. Does bring me on though to this whole issue of I've got to start thinking now about where my final destination is going to be with my Crimean War project, because essentially all I've been doing so far is painted up what you might call an army for the British, and now I'm in the process of painting up what you might call an army for the Russians, but I've just been going about it by painting up all the figures that are available in Eureka's range for the Russians and the British. They do Turks and French as well, but number of things with that. They're not, the Eureka range isn't totally comprehensive, for one thing, and for another, there weren't that many. What am I planning to do wargaming wise really in the Crimean War? I haven't really given it much consideration. I've just been motivated by my interest in the history of the war, but I've now got to decide whether I'm going to try and recreate a particular battle, or whether I'm just going to fight what if scenarios and just have general sort of games, not set at a particular date in the Crimean War. So if you take these figures as as an example, I couldn't even tell you what actions they took place in. I mean, there were four, I suppose you could say, four main battles or conflicts that took place within the war on the Crimean Peninsula. This is, well, ignore what happened in the Baltic and so on for the time being. But you've got the Battle of the Alma at the beginning of the war. You've got Balaclava. You've got Inkerman. They are the three principal ones that the British were involved in. There was a later battle around the Chernaya River, which was more where the French and the Sardinians were more involved than the British. But then you've also got the actual day-to-day fighting on the siege lines around Sebastopol, and the various assaults that took place on the Russian defences, some of which were catastrophic. But as I say, if you take this particular type of cavalry on the Russian side, I'm not familiar with any of those actions that these cavalry took part in. The most likely one, I would imagine, would have been the Battle of Balaclava, because that was far more of a cavalry battle. But this is my point, that I'm now getting to the stage where I'm completing the initial kind of steps in getting armies together, but a lot of the figures that I've got, loads of cavalry on both sides now. None of that really got involved in the Battle of the Alma, and famously Raglan kept the cavalry back, kept it in a Hatbox, was it? I think he referred it as. But yeah, they certainly weren't involved. So if I was going to recreate Almo, I'd need a lot more infantry and artillery. Balaclava, more possibilities there to make use of all the cavalry figures I've got. Inkerman, certainly not. It was, far more of an infantry battle. So I'm going to have to start making my mind up soon, where I'm going to take the project. I suspect what I will do is play a lot of, just non-specific, that's the word I'm looking for, non-specific battles where I just line the two armies up on either side just to get a few games. And of course also in the background is the announced plans some probably 3 years ago now, at a Warlord Day open event, that they were going to publish a supplement, a Crimean War supplement for black powder. I didn't hold out any firm faith that they would actually do that in the short term, and that's indeed how it's turned out. I've not heard any news on it in a long time. If I were to be very cynical about it, I might even suggest that Warlord make those kind of announcements in order to promote the sale of their ranges of figures, because they do have quite a large range of Crimean War figures. Maybe they were just luring people into buying those figures, thinking that there was an imminent release of a supplement for black powder. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't worry me, because I was interested in the Crimean War long before that, and black powder will be probably my rules of choice to play games. But I've based these figures for Age of Valor, which is a spin-off of Age of Eagles, which is the sort of fire and fury equivalent for the Napoleonic Wars. But to play Age of Valor, you need to have the Age of Eagles rulebook. You don't need to have the Fire and Fury rulebook, but you do need to have Age of Eagles. And that was kind of what I had in mind at the beginning anyway. So I've got plenty of options there. But my other consideration now is eventually I'm going to have to find sort of alternative ranges for all the things that are missing from the Eureka range. So in particular on the Russian side, they do no heavy cavalry of any sort. They do plenty of Cossacks and Hussars and Uhlans, but there's no cuirassiers or anything like that. So whether I bother myself about that, I don't know. As I say, it does, does depend a little bit on the type of games and the setting that I'm going to play them in. But anyway, yeah, really happy with the way these turned out. I think they look very colourful, and always enjoy painting Lancers anyway. And next thing I've got to do, I think, is to paint some Hussars up, and then I've still got to paint command figures up, and then I will have kind of got to a stage where I'll have to, make a few decisions, as I was trying to describe a moment ago. And I think that is everything I have to say on these figures. So thank you very much for watching, and see you on the next video. Bye for now.